Hello and welcome. I'm Rob Jackson with the Institute for Sexual Integrity. This is our second module entitled How Sexual Sin and Addiction Conceal Your True Identity. Let me walk you through the objectives. First, we're going to be discussing intimacy disorder, and many of you have already heard me speak on the topic, but we're really going to look at how it drives your behaviors. I want you to see the connection. Secondly, we'll be talking about when sexual sin becomes addiction. If we speak of addiction, we're not saying it's not sinful. There's a connection. And then third, we're going to talk about how if you're in Christ, your true identity is now divine. And yet that identity in Christ gets covered by sexual sin and sexual addiction. So we want to make sure that you see how identity plays into recovery as well. Now first, let's go back to intimacy disorder so we can see the root of the problem. I'll be talking about four things. In intimacy disorder, we're going to look at how it's just a fact of life. It's a part of the human nature. We'll be talking about how intimacy disorder develops over time because of how we get wounded. We'll talk about how those wounds further impair personality. And finally, we'll talk about how all of that becomes behavioral. So first, let's look at intimacy disorder as simply a part of being a human being. We're all sons and daughters of Adam and Eve. We have come into a fallen world that is falling into greater and greater struggles here in modern times. So it's natural that we're afraid, insecure, naive, prideful, and rebellious. This is at the root of intimacy disorder. Because of these kinds of things, we're really very cautious about bonding to other people and allowing them to bond to us. And yet that's all pretty superficial. It's the lack of bonding with God that is foundational. So intimacy disorder functions at two levels: in the interior with God and the exterior with everyone else. And sadly, it worsens over time. We can talk about how intimacy disorder is a whole life issue, or maybe just speak of it in general terms, intimacy. It goes from womb to tomb. Obviously, I have clients who have reported some really sad things happened with their moms when they were carrying them as babes in the womb. And we know that babies are having this prenatal development that in science now is said to be equal to genetics and environment. So what happens in the womb can stay with you. Now, we don't have to be fatalistic. There's all kinds of things that can take place for good. But nevertheless, when wounds happen in the womb, it has a lifelong significance. And then, of course, once birth occurs, wounding becomes very active, becomes very tangible. And over time, these wounds begin to accumulate. And basically what we're looking at as they accumulate, a couple of things can happen. We could be gaining the seeds of mood disorders like anxiety or depression. So for example, if you're a child growing up in an anxious home, you may begin to anticipate that every place is going to be anxious. That wouldn't be unusual. And so mood disorders have early roots in childhood. And on top of that, there are many personality things that we'll be talking about that are developed in childhood as well. Basically, these become natural coping mechanisms where we're trying to defend ourselves. Now, throughout all of the stuff we do here at the Institute, I'm going to be trying to contrast natural versus supernatural. We are children of God. We are free in Christ to walk by the Spirit. So I want to be addressing supernatural living. But before we get there, we have to look at the obvious, what happens when we're living in our own human nature. And this kind of thing actually causes increasing isolation. We don't trust others, they don't trust us, we react, they react. Isolation becomes somewhat the norm with intimacy disorder. And all of this just has a way of congealing. It continues to confirm our distorted thoughts and damaged emotions that it's not safe to be in relationship with others. Now, I think we can all agree when we've been hurt, that moment was not safe. But if we overgeneralize and begin to think that every relationship is going to always be problematic,